Following a thorough drubbing in the 2026 local elections, members of the Labour Party are increasingly looking to see who could replace Prime Minister Keir Starmer as leader of their party. Of the throng vying for leadership, there are two key runners and riders: Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, and the ex-Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Each brings a distinct style and set of values to a potential premiership. My name is Jack Aaron. I'm a psychologist who specialises in the analysis of personality structure. What makes people tick, why they do what they do, and how they are likely to interact with others. In this video, I'd like to explore the differences in their temperaments, how they contrast and compare with that of Keir Starmer, and which of these potentially bodes the most well for the United Kingdom in the event of an upcoming general election. Let's look first at the beleaguered incumbent, Sir Keir Starmer. What can we say about him? Well, I'd say that his skill sets are perhaps less typical of what you'd expect of a politician, and far more of what you'd expect of a manager. This is someone who comes out of a background in the law, someone who specialised in scrutinising documents, looking for particular points of information that he could take forward in certain cases, often in pro bono cases, to win people who otherwise had no money a potential victory against large corporations or against potential death penalties in the Caribbean. This is someone who specialised in viewing things through what was technically accurate, technically true, but at the same time not engaging with the same charisma that has defined more successful politicians in the past. However, his practical, technical, managerial approach has also led to criticism, with him being deemed to lack the sort of human and relatable factors which have made other prime ministers more successful. This can be seen especially in his attempts to counterbalance that very professional approach by talking more about his family, relating how his father was a toolmaker, but doing so in such an over-rehearsed way that people would even laugh at him.
When I grew up, my dad was a toolmaker. He worked in a factory. It's true. My mum was a nurse, and actually we couldn't make ends meet.
Him visibly getting upset, leading to the issue that he is potentially too serious, lacking a sense of humour, lacking that common touch, and potentially, according to some, even holding the general electorate in contempt. At the same time as this, his managerial approach leaves open a large gap in terms of strategic vision, a sense of what he actually wants to bring forward for the country. And typically his general election and how he's actually run the country since winning that general election has been characterised by very, very minor, underwhelming promises.
Let's do that. There's the NHS budget. So how much more is Sir Keir Starmer promising? There we are. Not even 1 penny. It's not even 1% of the budget that you're adding. It's a small promise.
And a whole raft of U-turns.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister's latest U-turn? I feel like I say that every week.
Leading people to doubt that he will ever carry anything through to fruition. And this, I think, is down to that pragmatism, that sense of, okay, what works for me in this particular situation? But then lacking the conviction to take things forward past the point where it no longer seems particularly practical in that moment. But also, I fear, diverting his own strategic sense of how things need to operate and outsourcing it to others, potentially also leading him astray. As well as this, there is an aspiration for him to be more open, for him to take in different views and approach the world more internationally.
Let us just ask you quickly, you have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people that you can see working with in the future. Westminster is just a tribal shouting place. Yet,
despite this attitude of embracing openness, of rejecting the tribal shouting place of Westminster, he nevertheless has shown a rather authoritarian streak when put under pressure, as seen with his quite brutal crackdown on the Unite the Right riots following the terrible murder by Rudakabana.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online.
And yet a remarkable tolerance towards far worse actions taken by some illegal migrants and even others of his country of ethnic minorities, where there is a certain fear of being seen as racist in order to actually bring such people to justice.
If there's any reference or anything like that, what I would do is discard them as a mosque, leave them here. And you don't give anybody any reason or have any interaction with the police, negative interaction. That's my belief. So if there's any reference, get rid of them. You're not going to arrest anybody. I've been told that.
And this has led to accusations that Keir Starmer is a sort of two-tier Keir, someone who doesn't seek to uphold a fair justice, but is sort of very case-by-case managing things around what is seen to be politically viable to left-wing sentiments.
It is now clear to growing millions in this country that we're living under two-tier policing.
He has in fact been two-tier Keir all along.
As a result, there's been a significant loss of faith and trust in Keir Starmer as someone who can uphold even the basic levels of justice, despite coming from a background of the law. And going forwards, this has led to increasing unrest, increasing feelings of malaise in him as a leader. With this local election drubbing, of course, there is now an excuse for the Labour Party to pin all these failures onto Keir Starmer and finally remove him as the leader of the party. So, if Keir Starmer were to be removed as leader of the Labour Party, who could be the next Prime Minister? As I've said, there are two options. The first is Wes Streeting, the ex-Health Secretary, someone who very, I think, tactically stepped down in protest at Keir Starmer's leadership. Someone who, I would say, is remarkably ambitious and very, very open in how ambitious he actually is.
Are you going to step up and contest the Labour leadership? End the suspense now, please.
John, we need a proper contest with the best candidates on the field, and I'll be standing.
This is someone who has a great deal of charisma, someone who I think corrects Keir Starmer's own lack of charisma by being a very sociable figure, willing and able to talk to all manner of people. He's typically seen as quite approachable around the Palace of Westminster by a number of journalists. At the same time, there is an added duality to Wes Streeting, who despite his outward sociability, I think actually has quite an independent streak, quite a desire to stand apart from the collective, who speaks about his own successes as his own journey, his own past, his own remarkably candid reflections on his own grappling with his homosexuality and yet his Christian upbringing and trying to reconcile that.
Not only did I not choose to be gay, I chose for many years not to be gay, and it was painful and harmful when I see other people who've suffered in that way.
As well as someone who, when he enters into debates and enters into negotiations, tends to look as though he's going in it to win it, rather than reach a collective and mutual understanding with his interlocutors.
Your poor judgment, your crass remarks and your lack of apology brings the Labour Party into disrepute. It's losing us votes hand over fist. It's morally wrong. You should apologise. You continue to go ahead. You've not apologised. You're totally unrepentant.
Most clearly seen in his negotiations with the doctors during the doctors' strike.
And my question back to you is, when you're out on strike protesting a 28.9% pay increase, what's your message to the patients whose operations and appointments and procedures will be delayed and cancelled? I don't think that's fair. I don't think these strikes are necessary, and I don't think the BMA's actions are reasonable.
So if you put that together, we have someone who I think has an advantage over Keir in terms of having more of that charisma, more of that emotive, human, relatable instinct, which I think could serve him very well and potentially cause the electorate to be more comfortable with him as a leader for a duration of time. But who I think also brings potentially quite a hard edge, quite a more assertive and potentially even self-serving side, which may also put certain other aspects of the electorate, particularly those who would vote for the Labour Party, against him. Adding to this duality, there is a certain pragmatic whatever works mentality that Wes Streeting can take on occasion, especially in regards to certain sacred cows.
Now, what I'm proposing is that a Labour government would use spare capacity in the private sector to bring down waiting lists faster. Now, in some ways I'm not happy about this, but I've got to deal with the world as it is, not the world as I would wish it to be. So I'm making both a pragmatic argument that,
much to the chagrin of Labour Party grandees, such willingness to talk about things which are very, very unpopular with his base would make things far easier for Wes Streeting if he were to actually become the leader of the Labour Party, because of a willingness to potentially appeal to those on the right of centre and make very sort of hard, pragmatic decisions. But at the same time, this could endanger his likelihood of winning in an actual internal party leadership competition. On the other hand, we have Andy Burnham, someone who I would say has similar strengths to Wes Streeting in terms of being charismatic, in terms of being more relatable, but I would say takes this up the ante, takes this even further, where his emotional resonance is his key strength.
That day your voices were carried off this cot and into every living room in the land, and from there into the heart of the establishment. I knew you were right and they were wrong.
At the same time, I feel he does not have the same pragmatic whatever works mentality, being far more willing to define himself as an aspirational socialist in contrast to Wes Streeting.
Aspirational socialism. It is a vision of a society in which we'll all have the opportunity to be the best that we can be, not determined by the postcode of the bed you were born in. A society which won't exist as a barrier to our hopes and dreams, and a party which won't fall in the face of big business and the markets.
Someone who during the COVID years made very clear his opposition to some of the more brutal restrictions on those around Greater Manchester and the effects on local people living there.
Today we communicated our clear and unanimous view to the government. It is wrong to place some of the poorest parts of England in a punishing lockdown without proper support for the people and businesses affected.
Someone who I think is at his best when he is communicating his empathy, communicating his position as a sort of local protector of the people who live there against the excesses of national government. But here is also the key issue with Andy Burnham, someone who I think once again lacks a sense of strategic vision, even whilst he has a charismatic resonance. Frequently he would make promises he could never actually keep, such as on his desire to reduce homelessness in Greater Manchester.
I've come to speak to people who've been here overnight sleeping rough. Promised to do something about it, and that's why I'm here. The issues aren't easy to solve, but I said I'll do something about it. We will do something about it. By 2020, we want to end rough sleeping by that time.
As a result, setting himself up for inevitable failure. Buoyed up by that desire to communicate positivity, that desire to communicate something which will create a positive response in the potential electorate, he inevitably can set himself up for failure due to not really thinking about how plans are likely to work out over the long term.
Okay? Your credibility has disappeared overnight, okay? So don't be misled with that, okay? If you don't have any authority over it, why are you sat here tonight, and why aren't the people that do have the authority sat here tonight?
Now, if he were to become an MP and thereby be able to contest the Labour Party leadership, I think he'll be the most likely person to win because of that charisma, and I think because he is very clearly not likely to be seen as a sort of sellout to the right by those in the Labour Party. I also think that because of this charisma and his ability to present himself as a unifier, Andy Burnham would be able to give the Labour Party a lease of life in the run-up to a potential general election. However, if his plans do not work strategically, if they do not lead to outcomes that are beneficial for the nation, such as successfully countering the cost of living crisis, such as successfully mediating and reducing the tensions between ethnicities as a result of a huge amount of immigration to the country, then even his charisma won't be able to maintain his honeymoon going into that general election. And if things actually get worse as a result of it, such as national debt spiralling out of control, then we could very well see the loss of any advantage he might bring to the Labour Party if he were to win that leadership election. An added area of complexity for Wes Streeting is that he is the MP of Ilford North, where he has a very narrow margin of success. If he were to become the Prime Minister, there is a risk that his policies may be dictated by a desire to see off the Islamist independents that threaten his own security as an MP and therefore as a Prime Minister. Add that to his very pragmatic, whatever works mentality when it comes to decisions on policy, and we could see someone very overtly abandoning certain principles and convictions he may have had before becoming Prime Minister, and as a result, losing the electorate on a willingness to do whatever works in order to keep his hold on power, rather than doing anything that he may actually believe in. Overall, I'd say that the key ingredient that these three potentials for the Labour Party leadership lack is that strategic nous, that ability to tune out of what they are doing in the immediate moment to the longer term outcomes of their policies, how things will play out over time, not only in terms of the long-term effects, but also in terms of the long-term perceptions, how they will be seen later down the line and how they will be remembered. And I think that is the crucial thing which will lead the Labour Party to lack that ability to break out from the hold which Reform UK has on it at this moment, to adjust with the changing times and to keep the Labour Party successful over the long term. And that depends entirely on the success of Reform UK against its break-off competitor, Restore Britain. In the next video, I will take a look at these two parties, specifically the temperaments of their two leaders and whether they have what it takes to become the government of the United Kingdom.